Good. I'm glad to be here, glad to be with you all. And we are on the path. And the topic, of course, here, the light at the end of the tunnel. And this is one day before the solar eclipse here in North America. I look at this as also as an astrologer and know that the eclipse that was last October crisscrossed, from the Oregon area through the United States, through Texas, and on into Mexico. And this particular one starts again from Mexico, goes through Texas, and goes up towards Maine and Canada. So they cross in the state of Texas on the southern border of the United States in 2024, an election year. I wonder what might happen. But for us, we are following another dynamic of the light and of the paths that we as souls, as we connect, with everyone and with our paths, with our life unfolding. And so I'm going to be sharing a couple of ideas here from my book. This is a 2 volumes here, Inner Journeys, Cosmic Sojourns. And it's about, reincarnation, some work that I have been doing for the last 40 years, connected with me as a hypnotherapist, aiding people to recall their past life recollections, but as well as the life between lives experiences. Along the way, something else came up that I then described as transpersonal journeys. And this is almost like a pre setup to clear the space so that one could then, once one is in an altered state of awareness, be able to take off and to go into those spiritual journeys that one is really hoping for. But sometimes there may be an incident, like when we were 5 years old, that is unconscious and needs to be worked out, and our higher self knows that and wants to deal with it before we take off into yet another life. And so that developed, as I said, this thing called a transpersonal journey. So basically, a lot of the case studies that I have used within these books, 2-volume series, are from 40 years worth of clients and interviews and interesting topics. And this particular topic is indeed about the light at the end of the tunnel. What happens when we die, when we go to the other side? And I have spoken several times to near-death experience groups. And oftentimes, of course, those individuals who have had a near-death, they, oftentimes point towards or discuss recollections of seeing the light, seeing the tunnel, going towards some sort of light, having, a visit to the other side, and then being told, okay, that's enough, go back, you got some more stuff to do, go back home. And then, of course, the result is, all of their really interesting anecdotes and talks about what happens on the other side. So I take obviously a different point of view. As a spiritual hypnotherapist, I'm sitting there with people who go into an altered state, and I hope that quick meditation gave you a bit of a feeling for that, so that one can leave our present personality to go into our higher self, our soul, and that's the part that has the recollection. That's the part that has been there. It's not this body here, Stephen Poplin, but it is, this higher self. And so I've got a particular chapter on the Bardo, and that is to be explained here in just a second. So allow me to read a couple of different things from this book, the first chapter here. Starting off with a quote by David Bowie. "Look up here. I'm in heaven. I've got scars that can't be seen." And that's from his Lazarus, just before he died. Bardo, Recovery Places in Spirit. We meet Donald again, the Catholic bishop from the last chapter. This soul has experienced a lot. This scene is right after death. I left the body. And here I interject. I orchestrate a transpersonal journey technique. It is time to release anything that may be lingering. We cut the cords between the remorseful bishop and Donald, my client, who has guilty feelings from that past life. And he was a very bad bishop, by the way. Then he says, I feel lighter. New energy coming into this place that has occupied the never. Never, fear, guilt, etc., all gone. Now the quiet. I am in a quiet place, resting. Yes, this is the place of rest, a quiet place, a place and a time, or maybe beyond time, an in-between place, a time and space of integration and reinforcement. Here I give suggestions for recovery, and for in this space, one is often recharging and rejuvenating quietly, oftentimes receptive, like a deeper trance. This place has many names and is mentioned in numerous cultures and traditions. Some call it the Bardo. Others may say purgatory. The Tibetan word Bardo means intermediate state and is also translated as transitional state. Some ancient Buddhist text says that we could be in the Bardo in our dreams. Other Buddhist traditions deny the Bardo and declare that the soul is immediately reborn. That certainly is not my experience. There are a few souls who reincarnate immediately, but it is often a hasty decision and sometimes without the advice or blessings of one's guide or the higher beings. But as we have free will, we can choose to re-enter quickly of our own accord. I have met souls who found a developing baby, a fetus, and a willing host within months. I wonder if the pregnant woman or parents were non-committal or teetering on the decision to keep the child. Perhaps they were nudged into acceptance by this willing or insistent soul. It could be that they, the soul and these anonymous parents, wouldn't have much in common. This happens, though rarely. The souls of these parents are doing a favor. Very likely, the three personalities would not be very close. Some souls wait until the last months to connect to their earth baby body, but this is not often. Others align with the fetus early, but then leave it to develop on its own while they continue with their spirit sojourns and interests. One soul told me, "Oh, it is so boring. I leave for weeks at a time. I have other things to do." Well, anyway, in my experience, a quick re-entry does not occur often. Normally one is away from the earth for decades and some for hundreds of years. But back to the Bardo, or recharging space. The popular notion of purgatory is of an intermediate place after death, a waiting or purification place. In the official catechism of the Catholic Church, however, we find the final purification, or purgatory, 1030. All who die in God's grace and friendship, but still imperfectly purified, are indeed assured of their eternal salvation, but after death they undergo purification so as to achieve the holiness necessary to enter the joy of heaven. We have any recovering Catholics here? Anyway, in my work and research, I believe that many religions have intuited this in-between place and describe an approximate idea of it, but then dogmas enter the debate and one is left with a pro or con discussion. Or there seems to be a lifeless institutional committee decision and a resolution which detracts from actually studying the place itself. I find it interesting that for thousands of years, various faiths have pointed to this place, this phenomenon in between and just after death. For instance, the Muslim idea of barzakh, mentioned in the Quran, is said by some scholars to be the barrier between the body and the spirit, a place in which after death, the spirit is separate from the body, freed to contemplate the wrongdoings of its former life. According to Islam, although the soul is aware of its misdeeds, it cannot correct them or bring action to change things here. This barzakh is also described as an impassable barrier between fresh and salt water, an interesting analogy. Evidently, similar to the Catholic limbo, one awaits for judgment. To my modern mind, some of these religious beliefs are rather vague or sparse, and on the patriarchic end, too harsh and fatalistic. Where is the mercy and love? Below and in other chapters, we will visit this place of rest and recuperation, which I would say is an in-between place to dissolve and cleanse the heavier earth residue. I refer to this place as the Bardo, although souls I've worked with don't feel the need of giving a specific name to it. Maybe we should just let it be. My client had a difficult past life. It was the end. I am happy to go. And then dies. I'm in a bubble up here above and in an orb, see-through, floating, isolated in the sky, the clouds. This helps. This dissolved the calcifications. My knees were so stiff. Over the clouds, I can emerge, disembark from this orb. I was there for 2 years. I'm light, flexible now, full of power. As if I can stretch. Clean air. I breathe it in. This resting place is very peaceful and rejuvenating for these souls who just left Earth. However, every now and then I hear, if only I had, or I should have, or even if only I had actually stopped, thought it through. We have all heard variations of these regrets and second guessing. This could be for some a habit, like periodic nail biting. But for others, it can be a heavy time of regret, worry, and even depression. Yes, depression on the other side, after death. The emotions sometimes accompany those souls. When souls go there, especially in the Bardo, there are wise and loving souls to offer solace, understanding, and compassion. This special place is an ideal space for lamenting, orienting, reviewing, and eventually finding closure and peace. In the meantime, the unseen world, the spiritual world, holds more secrets, experiences, and journeys. There is a universe beyond the Bardo. Spheres, stars, galaxies, and more. There are soul nurseries with little cute orb babies. There are exquisite libraries, laboratories, recreation areas, and other dimensions. A complex and fascinating cosmos. The Bardo is often the first entrance level into spirit. There are many other places to explore. Before we move on, however, there are some souls who can't seem to let go. And then I go on to describe in the next section here a couple of examples of people who were indeed stuck to the point where they could not move on. And I have come across in some of my experiences someone who describes dying, and then there's kind of a cloudiness or a fogginess, and the next thing I am told, because I'm just there witnessing, I'm listening, I'm intuiting, and then they say, well, I'm in the woods. It's very peaceful here, very quiet. It's been very nice. I needed time out. I just need the peace and quiet. And then I'll ask them, very good, I understand that. So you're on the earth and you're in the woods and you're just taking time out. And they said, yes, yes. And how long have you been here? And I get sometimes months, sometimes years. It's varied. But sometimes when they're really heavy, really unhappy, they did not agree to how they died or the circumstances of death or the circumstances of their lives, they could be brooding and they're sullen and they just are angry and they don't want to talk to anybody. And they can be seen then as ghosts left upon some section of the earth, oftentimes quiet places. I've even come across sometimes a couple who are in the water, in a pond, in a lake, because that's where they died. I found that very interesting, very strange. Here's a little cat creature. Which reminds me, since the cat wants to show up right now, people who have had pets wanting to know, do they too, go to the other side? Do they have souls? And indeed, we have met many in my sessions. I remember one woman who really loved dogs, really large dogs, by the way. And she had quite a few. And then in a past life, she really loved horses. She couldn't afford horses in this life, but she had large dogs. And so in that past life, she dies, and then she kind of goes out towards this meadow and says, wow, kind of a shimmering, like a meadow of grain or wheat or something. And she gets closer and closer, says, no, no, this is not grain. These are sparkling souls. These are animals. Oh my goodness. These are horse souls. And then she walks through them with her hands out, both hands out, touching their muzzles, just walking through them with kind of a loving acknowledgement of how she had treated animals in past lives and this life. It was a beautiful experience. Here is a quote from Edgar Cayce. Pray oft for those who have passed on, those who have passed through God's other door, death, are oft listening for the voice of those they have loved in the earth, the nearest and dearest thing they have been conscious of in earthly consciousness. Thy prayers direct such an one closer to that throne of love and mercy, that pool of light, yea, that river of God. Edgar Cayce reading 3954. Nice and inspiring. Shall I go on? The next example is fascinating for various reasons. Jean recalled an unhappy life as a female who lived between 1870 and 1930. She recalled losses, strife, even a refugee phase in that difficult life. A short-lived second chance at happiness ended abruptly, and then this past life personality gave up, shut down, lost it, until Jean, in the present life, my client, woke up at age 28. She told me that she was sort of sleepwalking until age 28. As incredible as it sounds, she was in a twilight zone, a bardo of sorts, until she realized that she had to take responsibility for her life and happiness now. I find this intriguing. In a sense, she checked out while in that past life, still living, but not there anymore, lost in her grief. I wonder sometimes about dementia or Parkinson's or some other form of detachment, or people who are just checked out. Then after that past life death, this soul experienced the drifting out of body phase that one could call a ghost, and years later, incarnating as Jean, but still not awake or totally in charge of her life. I assume that she was just going through the motions, not totally engaged as a youngster, and on into her teens. And then at 28, she woke up. Wow. I'll tell you what, I've never come across a story like that, but it was such an unusual, interesting story. I said, well, it's going to be in my book. I recall a few times when I met someone who was absent, not quite there. I wonder how would this be diagnosed in a person today? Beyond psychology, parapsychology now takes another level of importance, expanding personal development of the psyche, the psychological and its periphery. Mystics speak of this awakening. They are referring to the higher self aligning with consciousness. Have you, dear reader, ever heard or even said, "I was beside myself"? Or perhaps you uttered, "Why did I say that?" I also like the joke. Are the voices in my head bothering you? Yes, indeed. There are some ideas, phrases, and feelings that seem out of character or even contrary to self. Who said that? As you can surmise from this chapter, there may be an entity, a forlorn or lost soul, who is a bit too near. So near that the thoughts, emotions, and reactions of that other soul are being registered incorrectly as coming from within. Yes, too near. There are other times, however, that we are unconsciously replaying an old tape or recording from a strong personality from our youth or further back. This could be a relative or a neighbor, a bully or a critic, and whatever they said stuck or was recorded. I sometimes think of this other voice as a digital virus, and we need antivirus software to delete it. In some of my transpersonal journeys, we do just that. Seek, locate, dissolve, and delete that old message. It does not belong to you. So, when strange voices, unusual or inappropriate thoughts, or contrary ideas come into our inner radar, we can and should ask, who is there? Where did this come from? Lost souls, entities, are sometimes called attachments. They are not necessarily evil, but troubled, brooding, and emotional. They are often stuck in some old drama. They are attracted to lonely children, but also to bars, saloons, alcohol and drugs, anesthesia, and hospitals. One must allow or give permission for them to stay. We have free will. We cannot be possessed without our permission. Having said that, there are attachments, oftentimes unknown, and visitations that could turn into long-term guests. These guests, if that is the case, then I would suggest a prayer of protection. Here is one that came to me from my spirit guide. And if you wish, you can just simply listen to it, or you can tune in, because this is a prayer for psychic self-defense. We attune to Spirit Divine. Great Spirit, Mother, Father, God, I ask to be a pure channel of light, love, healing, and wisdom. I am protected in a bubble of light. Surrounding my aura is a golden light of love and protection. That which is positive, I gladly accept. That which is negative bounces off of my protective aura and is sent to the central light, which transmutes it. I am a pure channel of light, love, healing, and wisdom. May the divine power flow through me, not from me. I am benefited by being of service here and now. I am blessed by my contributions and circle of friends. I am centered in my faith and serenity. And so it is. Amen. Thank you for listening, and blessings to you today, this Sunday, and our soon-to-be eclipse coming up.
Thank you very much, Stephen. That was wonderful. I really appreciate your work and your research and that you were able to come today and share with us. I'd like to open the floor to discussion, questions, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
Okay, y'all remember to unmute yourselves one at a time.
I see Patsy first.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. This was absolutely wonderful. But is that prayer in your book that you just read to us?
It is.
Okay, would you put the name of your book in the chat if you don't mind,
I can do that. Yes, I can.
please? I can't tell you how much it meant to me, the whole thing.
I'm really happy.
Very, very interesting. It creates other thoughts.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
I can see a whole discussion on the judgment thing. Anyway, I cannot say thank you enough. Hope I get to see you again or hear you again.
Wonderful. Thank you for that.
I think he's going to be at the event the 27th with us.
Oh, in Roanoke.
Yes.
Yes, I'll be there.
Oh, good.
Yes.
I'll meet you then.
Mhm.
Yes. Cindy, you had your hand up.
I did, and I basically was going to say the same thing Patsy did. So thank you so much. That was powerful. And I plan to get the book, and I'm disappointed that I already have plans that weekend. Otherwise, I would come see you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I've got an office in Vinton and Roanoke, so we can set up a time to get together. Once people come to really understand, that such journeys are possible, then they, of course, beyond just reading about it or hearing anecdotes or other people's stories, they say, well, I'm interested in my story. Where have I been? How have I been influenced? What did I learn, or what do I still need to let go of, from some past life, far away? It comes to me every now and then. A client would come and say, I've got this a fear of drowning, but I grew up in Nebraska, and we didn't swim very often. So where'd this fear come from? And sometimes, I'll say, okay, not presupposing that, oh, well, of course, that's a past life. I'll first say, let us, once we're in a trance state, say, let us go to when the fear began. And that could take us to a swimming pool experience when they were 7 or 500 years ago at another place, another life, another body. So wherever it needs to go, that's where we go.
I'm guessing you have a website.
Yes, I do. I'll go ahead and put that on too. But you see on the chat that I've got the Amazon, but you can pick my book up at Barnes and Noble and other places too.
Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed.
Stephen, what is your take on oftentimes children have invisible friends? What's your take on that?
I would believe them, basically, and I would say yes, and we can monitor that, but also with this idea first of, is a child kind of lonely, not making friends, a bit more isolated, not really integrating very well, and then I'm going to begin to worry a little bit more. So it depends on the attitude and the happiness of that child. However, children are so much closer to the other side, right? And it wasn't that long before being in an earth body that they were floating around in spirit. So another really interesting thing that I encourage parents to do, and grandparents, typically before the age of 7, ask a child in a kind of a matter-of-fact kind of way, do you recall another body? Did you have another life? Did you speak another language? Which, of course, typically one wouldn't even ask, but when you start thinking about reincarnation, yeah, well, let's start asking them. And without even thinking, oftentimes a child would totally give you you know, their rundown on what happened and what they were and so forth. And unfortunately, of course, you know, the older one gets, as we get into, you know, first grade, second grade, third grade, and so forth, children tend to forget because they're listening to the stories of all their other little friends, as well as some of the other things from adults and naysayers in certain religious institutions that say, "Oh, you're just making it all up," and then they start to shut down. They just stop, you know, believing. Oh, this kitty, you see my little kitty friend? Hmm,
Hi, kitty friend.
this is my familiar.
What's your kitty's name?
Yeah, another question?
What was your kitty's name?
Pardon?
What was your cat's name?
This is little Boo Boo.
Boo Boo.
Yeah, Boo Boo and Gigi are the two cats here. And Boo Boo is a little bit more timid and doesn't really want to go outside. Accidentally went outside yesterday, got freaked out within seconds
Oh,
and came
Oh.
running back. Whereas Gigi, you know, is ready to go out at any time, and then I have to go and chase her and bring her back in. But you know, that's really kind of cool, all these different personalities.
I have a question, Stephen.
Okay.
When we're looking at the past lives, do we see a pattern of evolution generally?
You know, that's an interesting one, you know, and actually one would think that there is a progression, you know, we go from, you know, caveman to, you know, learning in a constructive family or learning a trade, growing in awareness and consciousness. But I have found people recalling back lives, and they seem to go back and forth in levels of integration, where they could be kind of a primitive sort of person at one point and very advanced the next one, and then the following one, and it's like, well, where did that wise person go?
Right.
Because you're back to like a knucklehead again.
So it's whatever they need to learn at the time.
Exactly, right.
Do
And
you
when
ever get into the Akashic records with someone?
oh, you know, that's where most of the information, you know, is, whether it's identified or not, you know, it's all left there in the Akashic records. And that is a leftover transcript, as it were, in time and space, in which all of our past deeds and actions and even thoughts are registered. And so very seldom do I come across someone who says, oh, here we have the Akashic records, and now we can access them, a bit like how Edgar Cayce worked. Oftentimes it can be more symbolic, like they go into the grand library in spirit, and now I have found my book. Or what's even more awesome is one of the librarians, very wise, high level, angelic level souls, bring them, greet them, orient them, and say, and here's your book.
Right.
You know, and then it's not like a typical book, although it could be, again, symbolically, so for our consciousness today, it looks like a book, you know, and it opens up, and it's not like words, but it could be like, wow, like a kind of a magical Walt Disney show that, you know, the characters start moving inside of the book, and then you're in a past life, or you recollecting past life.
Thank you. Linda, did you have to comment?
I just wanted, are you talking to me, Linda?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to ask Stephen, had he ever heard of Sancta Sophia Seminary and Carroll Parish?
I have not.
Okay, well, I attended there and got my master's in divinity, and it was my first experience of being introduced to the concepts that you're talking about. You know, I came from a very conservative background, and it was so wonderful. It's just like the whole world opened up to me. And I guess I wonder why that's not common. I'm so happy to be with this group and my sister because I don't have anyone else that talks this talk. Why do you think it's so hidden?
Wow. Well, you're talking to a hypnotherapist.
Yeah, I have my
And I think we're talking about indoctrination,
okay.
and stamping, on things. I've got a talk also on my YouTube channel about the 9 doors of hypnotic suggestion. And really, one can take a look at our upbringings, our communities, our families, religions, and, for you thinking about, again, those young kids. And I say, that, asking, those young malleable minds, and they can go off into spirit. They can go off into all kinds of places. And we, as adults, we say, oh, that's their imagination. And it could be in their imagination, and sometimes it could be, no, you are just tuned in very quickly to
Right.
another realm, another dimension. But through acculturation, schooling, and tradition,
They forget.
we're just stamped about this is how reality is. And even
Right.
shaming young children who might say, "Oh, I see an angel." No, you don't. And as well as, and I mentioned, the Catholic Church in this little passage there, that when an institution who's got it all figured out, and they can go back to, hundreds and hundreds of years of edicts and treatises and pronouncements of this is how it is, then the individuals who are now, going to their parish saying, well, who am I, to question any of that? So the pressure of society and tradition just like weighs upon people so that, yeah, I'd have to say that the majority of the world, really doesn't have access to a lot of this information because, they already know how it is, so they don't have to ask how it is,
Preconceived, yeah.
right? And
Right.
even me as a hypnotherapist and a past life regressionist, when I think about, psychologists, psychiatrists, they typically will not ask about a past life because they know it doesn't exist. Right?
Steve, do you ever do private sessions?
Yes, yes,
Okay. And so if I wanted a session with you, I could contact you.
indeed, yes. And I
And
also
what's your,
put up my website there on the
In the
chat.
chat.
And you just click that and you'll come to my website, and on there is my email, and the email is the best way to get a hold of me.
I don't see the chat.
Yeah,
Linda,
at the bottom of the screen, there are several options, and one of them says chat.
Okay.
And you
Well,
click.
I will find out because I have a certification in hypnotherapy and had worked for 25 years as a therapist.
Oh, wow.
And I did a lot of inner child healing. And that hypnotherapy was so
Helpful.
very, very, very helpful. And this has just been like a breath of fresh air because I haven't had anyone to talk to about all of these kinds of things.
Mm.
People just generally don't, quote, believe in it or know about it or whatever. So I want to thank you for your talk and for being with us.
Good, my pleasure. I'm reminded, I studied under Michael Newton, who wrote the bestsellers Journey of Souls. And he was a psychologist in California who worked with hypnosis with his regular clients in California. And then one day, one of his clients started telling him not only about a past life, but of a time when she was no longer on the earth having an existence. And that got his attention. Whereas, perhaps another psychologist, another personality would say, oh, what an imagination this is, or where did we just go? Or, but he took it, as a possibility and then followed through on that. And that led him into thousands of his own sessions exploring life as souls in past lives, as well as the in-between lives. So yeah, it's really good, when someone just pays attention to sometimes that, offhand statement or something out of the ordinary, and just follow up on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and someone
Chris,
can give
did you have a
my
comment?
email,
Yeah.
please, to Linda Smith, one of you.
Yeah. Hey, Stephen,
Carl.
my name's Chris. I'm in Thomasville, North Carolina. And your type of work is right up my alley. So I have enjoyed hearing you today and appreciate you being here. I've experienced the QHPT by Dolores Cannon. Are you familiar with her work?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Well, it's a quantum hypnosis healing technique that takes you back. It gives a connection to your higher self, and then the higher self will show you a past life, or as in my last session, it showed me a non-earthly life, which was very interesting. So I love having my mind open to things about past lives. But one theory I wanted to ask you about was, what do you think about them actually, our lives all taking place at the same time?
Very interesting, Chris. And
Yeah.
I have heard of quantum healing and
Yeah.
that type of teaching and techniques. There's several schools of hypnosis. And oftentimes the subject of time does come into play, and time as a dimension. And there are probably places in spirit in which they are outside of time.
Mhm.
And when we talk about the Akashic records, that is, using time as part of it. On time and space, a record is kept. But on other, perhaps, dimensions, interdimensions, by the way, not on the Earth.
Right.
I know you're familiar with Ian Stevenson's work with children in very early past life memories, Stephen. He did research through the University of Virginia, and they would find young children who had verifiable past life memories, and they would go about verifying them. And
Right,
some
Ian
of those are
Stevens,
available on YouTube.
yeah.
And a lot of Dolores Cannon's work is available on YouTube also. You would enjoy her. I know you would.
I know about Dolores Cannon.
Oh, okay. How about Seth? Are you familiar with Jane Roberts'
years
Seth
ago,
material?
years ago, in probably in the late 70s, I read a book, by Seth, and I thought, again, like, Carlos Castaneda, it's like, pretty wild stuff, going off in different dimensions and so forth. But it really didn't grab me, didn't hold me, and so I just, followed other paths.
Right.
Including, looking at comparative philosophy, different belief systems, Buddhism, Taoism, so forth, Hinduism, which believes, by the way, in karma and reincarnation. And I settled upon Edgar Cayce and the inspiration, of what I felt to be someone who was probably a pretty legitimate source of information, because he did not have like a particular slant on things. In fact, what came through him kind of was outside of his educational experience. I think he was only made it to the 8th grade in school, and he was just a simple Bible school teacher. He just, was a simple Christian reading the Bible once a year, once through every year. So that was his perspective. And then from out of his mouth in a trance state, he would talk about Atlantis and ancient Egypt and reincarnation, past lives, angelic sorts of things, and even astrology. So I was very impressed with what I found with Edgar Cayce.
Yes, I'm impressed with Edgar Cayce. Also, you mentioned to me when I met you that you were involved with Spiritual Frontiers. And that's an organization that was started by Arthur Ford, a very famous American medium. And I'm glad to know that it's continuing.
Yes, yes. And I'd have to say that was probably years ago in the 80s. I don't know if it still is, but
There
it
are
would be
still
good.
some organizations in Virginia and North Carolina and New York, other places around the country. It's not a big organization, but they do have a presence.
Yes, very good. Very good.
But we're glad you're here and we hope you will come back.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. About 6 years ago, I had an uncle, Bob, who lived in San Diego, and he passed away. And I think he was like in his late 70s. So I thought it was relatively early, for these days, but he passed away. And he was a really big motorcycle fan. And he would, he enjoyed the national parks in the United States, and he would take his bike and just go over and visit these national parks. And so it was probably maybe 2 or 3 months after he passed away. And I was living in Iowa at the time, went over towards the Missouri River there, and it was just visiting a town. And on a bridge, it might have been over a tributary of the Missouri, but on this bridge, suddenly there was the roar of a motorcycle. And this was a footbridge, so it wasn't on the footbridge. So I looked down below, and there was a street down there. There was no motorcycle in sight. And I go, "Hey, Uncle Bob, how you doing?"
Thank you again for being here today, and I hope you'll come back.
Thank you.
We've enjoyed having you very much.